Let's make sure we're good. Okay. Are we good to go, Nick?
Good to go.
Lovely. All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone to Folio's second workshop of the summer. I'm Kathy, the CEO of Folio, and your host for the summer. We are very excited to see you today. For everyone in the live audience, this session is interactive and conversational. So please ask questions throughout the presentation in the chat. Feel free to answer in the chat. We will be monitoring it throughout the session. Today, we are overjoyed to introduce our guest, Nick Gyani, North American Sales Lead at Canva. Nick is not your average tech executive. He's a dynamic force at Canva, currently serving as the North American lead for higher education, where he's been instrumental in expanding Canva's footprint across universities and colleges nationwide. Nick's impressive career journey spans leadership roles at notable tech companies like WP Engine, as well as entrepreneurial endeavors in fashion and retail. So, let's kick off this conversation with our first question. Nick, why did you decide to join Canva, and what drew you to the company?
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks for the intro. It's great to be here. Why Canva and what drew me to the company? I think it was back in 2020. So, like a lot of people, there's like some life evaluating happening during that time frame. Um, and, I realized that I wanted to do something a little bit different. I was at WP Engine and things were going great. The people there were amazing. We were growing pretty rapidly. But I realized that I wanted to, kind of take a chance on something that potentially could be bigger. And this is definitely not a knock on WP Engine. WP Engine's values are amazing. But some of the things that I saw Canva doing in the world is like what first attracted me to the company. So just like core values as a company were the first thing that attracted me. And as I started to look into it further, I started to realize that kind of the reach that Canva potentially had in the next, call it decade, was what had the potential to be massive, right? And it does seem like we're on the trajectory still, with a lot of work to do. So the answer, I guess, is a couple of different things. First, it was the values that Canva brought to the table. Second was like the product and the offering and the reach potential that Canva had and still has today. Um, and then, ever since being here, we constantly talk about this two-step plan, which is step one, become one of the most valuable companies in the world. Step two, do the most good we can. And we realize that the fuel for step two really starts with step one, and it's sort of this cycle that we want to be in forever. So this like two-step plan, the mission, the values is really what drove me to Canva and why I, tried pursuing a career back in 2020 and why I'm still here.
Awesome. I love how simple it is also. The two-step plan, it perpetuates success and impact, which is great. Can you talk about the reach that Canva has when you first started and now where it is today?
Yeah, I mean, you can look up kind of numbers and charts, and everything you see is just extremely, extremely up and to the right, like something I've like never really seen before. So that reach, I think, seeing the numbers on paper really like show what that reach is. I think what's even more exciting though is like internally at Canva, we see all this rapid growth and we see the charts up and to the right, but internally we feel like we've still like barely scratched the surface. And I remember saying this like 3 4 years ago, and it's amazing that we've grown so much in the past 3 or 4 years, but it still feels like we've barely scratched the surface. So that to me is like the biggest indicator of potential reach. And we talk about product launches and all the exciting things, and we all do it with like democratizing design in mind, right? Like empowering everyone, everywhere, on any device, in any language, to be able to design. And when you have that sort of mentality when you're building a product, it's sort of inevitable that your reach is effectively like anybody that has a computer that goes on the internet is basically what your potential audience could be, right? And yeah, we'll see what the next 5, 10, 20, however many years bring, but um, it's exciting for sure.
Yeah, I think I remember watching a recent presentation of you and your team at a conference, and you were like in the billions of people that are using it on a daily basis. And I'm not surprised at all because all of the students that are on our platform use it, whether it's for their student organizations or in the classroom or just for fun to learn how to, how to design. So I think you've done a great job. That's a good question.
Amazing. Just want to clarify one thing. It's not in the billions yet. We are at about 230 or 240 million monthly active users, but the
Mm,
number of designs that are created on the platform are in the multiple billions.
okay.
So just want to make sure we're honest with the audience.
That's fair. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate it. All right, can we talk more about Canva and its culture? So, what type of person thrives at Canva, and what type of person might not thrive at Canva?
Great question, especially the not thrive, because that's always harder to answer. I think, look, the thriving answer, the people that thrive at Canva, I think the number one thing that I see for people that are successful at Canva is adaptability. At the pace that we're growing, at the stage that we're at, things just change very, very quickly. And we rapidly, whether that's like product, operations, our motion, whatever, however you want to frame it, things are constantly changing and very, very fast. So the ability to be adaptable and sort of like roll with it and embrace it to a certain degree is where I see people being most successful. Conversely, if that's not your cup of tea, if you really prefer a very like rigid specific way of doing things and your schedule is sort of like the same every day, um, those are the types of people that I think are not going to be as successful at a place like Canva. And there's nothing wrong with that by any means, in my opinion. Like, you are who you are. So if organization and like just doing things in a very methodical, consistent way every day is your cup of tea, then that's great. I just at the stage that we're at right now doesn't feel like that's the best thing for people at Canva.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like we are moving towards a world where more companies are um, maybe hopeful that people are really responsive and adaptive, especially in this world of AI. So it's a good skill set. We do help students train and become, sort of native to the changing environment of startups, especially. So that's good to know about Canva. Can you tell us more about what you do all day? So maybe like, what do you do for your job? What are your goals? And then I have another question on productivity, but we'll get there.
Totally. So I guess like I'll position it in a certain way. So when I was an individual seller, my calendar and sort of like work life really revolved around like customers, right? Like when am I having customer calls? When am I meeting with customers? When am I following up with them? And then all the other tasks that I had to do were kind of revolved around that. Moving into leadership, I think the customers, of course, are still extremely, extremely top of mind. But on a day-to-day basis, it's more like I'm revolving my like work life around my team. Whether that's one-on-ones with the team, looking at deal reviews, joining customer calls, which is still my favorite thing to do, um, and then also cross collaborating with other departments across the company, whether that's like our product team, our marketing team, our engineers, our customer success org. So it's a lot more time devoted to like the team and the people that are part of like building what we're building, along with the cross departmental people that I'm working with. So that's sort of what the day to day looks like, which is definitely a shift from like years ago when I was an individual contributor, now moving into a leadership role. So yeah, that is basically what my day to day looks like. It does change quite a bit, but it really stems from and revolves around the team.
Okay, makes sense. Are there any tools in particular that you like to shout out to help you become more productive?
Oh, great one. Well, specific tools that I use very, very regularly. I mean, we use Slack pretty extensively. We use Gong pretty extensively. And of course, the tool we use more than anything is Canva. We live in Canva, we use it, we collaborate, we comment, we create presentations, documents, whiteboards, all that kind of stuff. So those are probably the three tools I would shout out the most.
Great. All right. Why did you decide on sales and partnerships? I feel like you could have done many things. We looked at your background and what you studied economics. So how did you fall into this role?
No, it's such a good question. I think I was just fortunate at like a very young age um, to quickly like realize that I was good at sales and I was passionate about it and I enjoyed it. Um, I'm gonna totally age myself with this story, but my first sort of view into the world of sales was way back in the day in New York, growing up on Long Island, in the 90s. There were a lot of like investment companies, stockbroker firms. If anyone's seen The Wolf of Wall Street, sort of like that, not to that degree. But um, the job that I had, and my first like official job, was to contact people. So we would get a stack of index cards with a person's name and phone number, and there would be a hardwired phone on my desk. And I would literally just sit there and pick up the phone and call people all day, trying to get decision makers on the phone. And if I got one on the phone, I would pass it to a stockbroker, and for each one I passed, I would get a very small commission. Um, but I quickly realized how exciting that was for me. So I knew that like this like sales world was felt like very natural to me. So that's where it started, and then a whole bunch of kind of random jobs as I got older throughout high school, throughout college, and then even post college. Majored in economics, but didn't really want to be an economist. So uh, sales really felt like kind of a natural fit. So I moved into an account executive role at Verizon Wireless, fresh out of college. And then from there, transitioned into the entrepreneur world, where I started or co-founded a fashion startup in New York City. Spent most of my 20s doing that. And then realized, I really did want to move back into more of like traditional sales, and software sales was obviously huge. SaaS was getting really big in the like 20 teens. Um, and Austin seemed like a really good place for the startup world. Like specifically, I wanted to be like in the startup world. Um, moved to Austin, started out working at WP Engine. Um, at the time felt like I was taking a few steps back in my career, but I think that that's like important to do. Like when you want to shift career paths or industries or just like getting into sales in general, people always ask like what's like something that you may have to do is like you may have to take a role that either you don't want to take, maybe you're not getting compensated enough, maybe you think that you're like way better than or overqualified for the role, but sometimes you just bite your tongue, you do it, and I think the beauty of sales is if you do something like that, you can very easily and quickly prove your worth. And that was sort of the path I took moving into the SaaS world, right? Like took a job that I knew that I was taking, a pay cut and maybe in my mind was a little qualified for, but I was willing to do that and really um, use that as sort of my stair step into growing a sales career in the SaaS world. And sometimes you take that chance and you do. So that's how I ended up at Canva.
That's awesome. I really like your takeaway of, when you're making a transition from one thing to another. We sort of talk about it as a compounding career, right? So we sort of know in the modern world we're going to have to reskill, upskill, etc. And so we think about it in terms of like these loops that are sort of in this upward to the right trajectory. And every time you switch, you take this little loop, you do some more retraining, you take a new job, and then if you're confident and you're competitive enough, you'll boost your trajectory. So that is great. So speaking actually of confidence and competitiveness, that sounds like something that has been inherent to you for a long time. Is that true as a statement, or is that something you had to manifest over time?
No, that's 100% true. I'm laughing because like my wife even like sometimes gets frustrated with me because we like play board games and I get competitive about that, and she's like, "This is supposed to be fun." I'm like, it's only fun when like I'm trying to win. So, um, obviously an extreme example, but yeah, to answer your question, yes. Confidence and competitiveness have always kind of been natural, I guess, to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds it's something that I feel like we are really grateful for. So that's great. We didn't get to talk too much about your college days, so I'll just ask one question about it, in case it's different from where you are today. When you were in college, what did you think you wanted to do professionally?
Good question. I'm gonna actually rewind a little bit before that,
Yeah.
because the sales thing, like I mentioned, like my first job, it was like my early years at high school, but like throughout high school, throughout middle school, I actually thought I was gonna be a lawyer. And I think a lot of similar traits between like sales and law to a certain degree. But yes, I originally actually take it a step further, wanted to be a sports agent. So as you can see, big sports fan. So growing up, I was a huge sports fan. I always had, growing up, my mom always used to say like, you argue a lot and you're really convincing. I think you're going to be a really good lawyer one day. And I thought that I wanted to get a law degree and then move into like contract law and like the sports agent world.
Mhm.
Um, as I got older and actually in college, I sort of just realized that the lengthy sort of grind, I guess you could call it, of like pre-law, law school, and then several years of like internships, low level type of jobs was just not something that I really wanted to pursue. Um, I wonder if that would change if I was to like look back on it today, if I like would actually pursue it or not. Who knows? But at the time, I definitely I knew I didn't, right? So that was when during college was when I sort of realized like I don't really want to move into law, majored in economics, continued to pursue sales.
Okay, that makes sense. I feel like a lot of students today resonate with that, especially with the rising cost of education. Is it worth it? And there are a lot of AI companies, especially taking over a lot of these professional jobs. So it's a decision that is becoming even more, I guess, top of mind for a lot of students. So thanks for sharing your opinion on it. All right, so maybe we'll go like we'll pivot back to sales. What type of person thrives in sales? What types of skills and mentality seem to be prerequisites?
Good question. I think this probably applies to anything that you want to be successful in, but especially in sales, like work ethic. Like work ethic, hustle, like that is like to me one of the biggest things to look for in people, especially when we're interviewing. Is this person going to really like dedicate time? Like sales is just it's not for everybody, right? It can be brutal, but it can be really exciting and rewarding. Um, but it nothing successful comes unless you're extremely lucky. But consistent success does not come without having a really, really strong work ethic, right? Like putting customers top of mind, prioritizing your customers and your day-to-day work. I think like work-life balance is important, don't get me wrong, but I think the best and most successful salespeople really put in the hours, especially early on in their career. So I would say like work ethic and hustle is huge. The other thing that I would say is like a super important trait is just the level of being even keeled to a certain degree. Um, I think the beauty of sales is like when you're successful and you have a great month or a great quarter or a great year, the earning potential is huge and the personal satisfaction and reward is also huge, right? But the flip side of that, and it happens to anyone that's in sales, is like the downs are pretty low, right? Like you don't hit quota, you aren't compensated well, your confidence gets shot. Um, but to me, the best sellers are the ones that are sort of even keeled, right? Don't let the highs bring them too high. Don't let the lows bring them too low. And sort of just have this consistent sort of like long term focus of like, I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to perfect my craft as much as I possibly can. And in the long run, I'm going to be successful. And I can deal with some of these like sort of ups and downs.
Mm, yeah. I think knowing you're a big sports fan, I imagine maybe a lot of those lessons on work ethic, hustle, and being emotionally regulated have something to do with sports. Do you want to share more about that?
Yeah, it's funny that you tied sports into it because I think that that actually is where it like first started for me because I've been into especially like football, baseball, basketball since I was, I don't know, a little kid, single digits, like 8, 9 years old. And you don't realize the sort of impact that it's going to have, like not only just like watching and playing sports, but like the long-term impact that it's going to have, right? Um, you don't realize that until you get a little bit older, how like certain things or habits or interests when you're young really like help develop and form who you become as a person down the road.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I did gymnastics for a long time and into college, so I think a lot of my association with my intensity, we'll say, has to do with that commitment. But it's really healthy to learn how to overcome pain, how to compete, but be a good teammate at the same time. They're all very good skills. All right, let's do a little bit of rewind. When you were first starting out your career, how did you get your foot in the door?
Oh, good question. So I'll take this in a couple of different parts. I My first job out of college, Verizon Wireless, it really stemmed from like networking. It was a really tough time. It was 2008. The great financial crisis was front and center. So it was a tough time to find a role. Like there was mass layoffs happening kind of everywhere. Um, and the way that I kind of forced my way in, I guess you could say, was through networking, right? Just every conversation I had wouldn't necessarily be like, is there a job? Can I get a job? It was just like genuine interest in like, what do you do? Do you like it? What sort of opportunity potential is there? So it's just like, I guess like the key thing that I would take away from that initial job out of college was like just genuine interest when you meet people and like learn about their backgrounds and find a way to personally connect with them. That was a lesson I learned pretty early after college. So that was the first aspect. The other aspect, then when I moved into the sort of entrepreneur world, was like there's opportunities in life where you can take a chance, right? Like, and don't be afraid to do it. If I knew at some point I wanted to like have a family, have kids, and I knew that when that happened, the ability to take risks sort of minimizes, right? So when I was in my mid 20s, I thought, what better time am I going to have to take a chance on starting a business, right? And not to say that if you have kids you can't take chances. Of course you can. I think they're just a lot more calculated. So the entrepreneur world, the first job, a lot of networking, a lot of genuine curiosity. The second role, a lot of genuine interest in taking risk. And then the third piece we already touched on, right? It's like you have a resume, you've built a little bit of a track record, but now you're shifting industries or shifting the type of role. So then it's like you continue to do the things you learned. You're taking risks and you're networking, but now you're also willing to be a little bit humble and potentially take what in your head feels like a step back to take two steps forward a few years later. So, um, yeah.
Yeah, every career change is a big investment, but it's worth it, and it's up to you to make your own success. We did not talk about your startup. Do you want to share more about it?
Oh, sure. So very much bootstrapped, mom and pop type thing. I talked about the great financial crisis in '08. My older sister actually was affected by it. She was part of like the mass layoffs that were happening in New York. She was doing a little bit of traveling. She was we My parents were both born in India, so she had gone back to India, met some friends and like sort of distant relatives, and was trying to figure out what she wanted to do. I was kind of plugging away at Verizon Wireless at the time. I promise this is a long-winded story. I'm gonna get there.
Take your time.
So
All good.
she She was trying to figure out what she wanted to do. She always had like this passion for, just the fashion industry in general. Thought she wanted to pursue something there. Stumbled upon scarves. We had a family friend who was in the manufacturing industry in India, specifically with scarves and like luxury scarves. So she thought, why not like kind of try it, give it a whirl. So while I'm plugging away at Verizon Wireless, she starts this sort of scarf thing. Very small at first, very low key. She would bought some inventory from friends and family members in India, brought it back to the U.S. and was just doing like pop ups in New York City, right? So a friend had a jewelry store, she would do a pop up there. Someone else did like a party around Christmas, she would do a pop up there. And eventually, it just like kind of naturally started to pick up steam. And it became the point where we were like, okay, this is like becoming a real business. I have to like do something about it. So she was looking for someone to partner with at the time because she just couldn't take on the workload. She was traveling a lot to India, really focused on like the product and design um, and the whole production sort of workflow. Um, at the same time, I was getting that entrepreneur itch, also wanting to leave Verizon, wanting to take a chance. So she tapped me on my shoulder. Right? I actually tapped her on her shoulder and said, "Hey, what if we figure out a way for us to partner together and sort of like build this thing together?" And that was sort of the start of it. From there, we really focused on trade shows. That was like our primary kind of driver of revenue. Um, Sold to boutiques across the U.S., some really well-known department stores across the world, and it was fun. It was like a fun industry to be in, especially in New York, especially in your 20s. So it was definitely an exciting time. But after about 8 years of doing it, we decided that we didn't want to be in the industry anymore. We actually were ready to leave New York and kind of try a new city, both of us. So sold the company and moved on. But it was a great learning experience, a great time that I won't ever forget. So if anyone has an opportunity or has any sort of itch to do their own sort of startup or do their own business, regardless of what industry it's in, I highly recommend doing it because I feel like if I didn't, I would be very unsatisfied.
Mm, yeah. It does feel like some of the most satisfying and sort of gratifying work to know that your success leads to the outcomes that you want, right?
Totally.
Which in a lot of ways is a lot like sales, right? You put in those hours, you get the commission, you win whatever it is that you want for your financial rewards. So that's great. I do love the direct relationship between the two. Is your sister still like building companies? Do you think you will want to build another company in the future?
Good question. She is not currently. We'll see. Canva's really great right now. Like I said, it feels like we've barely sort of scratched the surface. I think there's so much potential and so much that we can do that it's hard for me to even think about like what's next. So we'll see.
Yeah,
Could there be a world where it happens? Sure. But definitely not something that I'm actively thinking about.
right. Makes sense. There's so much potential at Canva and so much more to grow. So that's great. So speaking of Canva, you are now leading the education sales team at an influential company with not billions of users, but billions of designs created on a very normal basis. It couldn't have been easy to get to where you are. What did you do to stand out?
Um, a lot of hours and a lot of hard work, especially early on when I first joined. When I first joined, you know, call it one of the first 5 or 10 enterprise sales reps at Canva back in 2020, realized that this is hard. It's a hard sell. I mean, Canva, especially at the time, was strictly a consumer product. Like we didn't even have an enterprise product, right? So you're yeah, there's a little bit of name recognition, but back in 2020 in the US, it wasn't as big as it is now, right? So there wasn't as much name recognition. There were a lot of accounts to support. and a lot of hours were put in very early on. So I think those first couple of years really helped set myself up for future success. But just learning the product inside and out, learning the organization inside and out, learning the sales process, the motion, and um, really striving for like excellence, I guess you could say, and really working to be a top performer at a company that was rapidly growing. So I would attribute sort of what made me, I think, stand out more than anything was the work ethic and the amount of time and dedication I had, and how much I kept customers top of mind, right? Like that was always my thing and still is today. Um, Without your customers, you don't have a company. So they should always be top of mind, and you should always be thoughtful about your approach to customers and prospects. So the combo of those two things, I think, was probably the biggest differentiator.
Hmm. It sounds like those values and skill sets are something that you almost can't help but doing. I think the first time I met you, I felt like, wow, this guy has a lot of energy. Was there ever a period in your like life or career where like your energy was lost, or do you feel like you're just the type of person who like if you're committed to something, you do it 100%?
I wouldn't say that there was like a time that like my energy was totally lost. I would say that there definitely are like downturns, right? And I think sales especially, I mentioned, it's not like a straight line up. It's a lot of ups and downs. So I wouldn't say that there's a specific moment, but I will say that there were definitely times, especially as an entrepreneur when we had the startup, like things were not consistent. It was very difficult. It was a grind. One quarter, one year, not so great. The next year, amazing. So I think like that period of owning, that startup was, I think, the biggest test, and where the struggle was sort of the most. But even with those struggles and those downturns, showing up with that level of like energy, positivity, optimism is something that like I guess maybe comes naturally. But I think it is important to always sort of have that focus and have that like level, that you can sort of turn on at any given moment. Um, and if you're genuinely passionate and like genuinely care, it just kind of naturally comes out, right? So um, if you're the type of person that has that, I would say don't shy away from it, right? Like lean into it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't try to act cool and aloof like you don't care. You do
Yeah.
deserve to
For sure.
care. Awesome. Oh, right. I was curious. For folks who, do have a lot of those ups and downs, do you have any tactics, things you do in your life to make sure that you can weather those, those low points?
Actually, yes. Three things that I really, really focus on. Um, Meditating. Try to meditate on a daily basis. I think it really helps keep me sort of like calm and centered. So that would be one. Exercise is huge. So physically, just like moving my body every day, I think is really important. Um, and uh, good, I guess, like good eating and sleeping habits. Trying to like eat healthy whenever possible and trying to sleep on somewhat of a regular schedule, I think is kind of the external like three things outside of work that I think are most important for me at least.
Yep, makes sense. I think definitely as we take on more responsibility and have more external stress, the more we can regulate our health, the better, right? Just one less thing to worry about.
100%.
All right, let's do a question from the audience. Lots of students are really excited about Canva. One of them asked, what do you look for when building your team?
Um, Sorry, one more time with that question.
Oh, sorry. What type of skills or characteristics do you look for when you're building your team?
I think we talked about it earlier. The like sort of hustle and the work ethic, I think is super important. Um, so that is for sure one of the things that we look for. But also, coachability, right? Coachability comes up a lot in interviews, and the ability to know that there are other people around to help. You're not totally on your own, and are you going to be receptive to um, to me or one of your colleagues, sort of jumping in, giving you some pointers, giving you some guidance. Like, do you want to get better? Do you consistently want to like get better and sort of perfect your craft? So those are the things that I mostly look for, are in those two categories.
Yeah, we sort of internally as a community call it an insatiable drive to learn or to be productive, right? You're just like, you can't help it. You want to figure it out and you want to
Yeah.
get better.
Yeah,
So.
you want to get better, and you want to, you don't mind asking for help, and you don't mind leaning into the help when it's given to you.
Yeah, yeah, that baseline confidence, we definitely try to encourage it as much as possible. Like
Yeah.
we have in our Discord, we have this channel for feedback, and surprisingly, so few students use it. We get like hundreds of, submissions to their projects, and they can always ask the mentors, feedback on their projects. But every single time, it's only like 50 students will ask for feedback. So, students, ask for feedback, which Nick is recommending as well. All right, so I know we're going over it by a little bit. I'll ask two more questions from the audience. What skills do you think are important for today's job market?
Great question. Well, one thing we always talk about at Canva is creativity. Creativity is super, super important, and that can mean a whole variety of things. To me, it means just like thinking outside the box a little bit, finding creative ways to not only show your ideas, but also show the way you think. So I think creativity is something that is super top of mind as far as like skills for today's workforce. Um, I mean, the obvious one is like AI, right? Like, are you using it or using it effectively? Um, I'm sure people already know that, hear about that on a daily basis, so we don't need to go too deep into that. But I think still important to showcase that, like, you're kind of leaning in, you're embracing it, and you're figuring out ways to effectively use it while still having a human touch. I think that's the key difference, between candidates.
Yeah, I think someone from our community posted an article recently. One of your co-founders actually did an interview about this and said that they're very happy to hire um, recent grads or dropouts that are AI native and incredibly creative as well. So exactly what you're saying, which is really impressive that you have that like same mindset. So yeah, great. Okay, last question before we let you go. What is your vision for the future of Canva and education? It's a big one.
Oh, that's a big, heavy one to end it. Vision for the future of Canva, specifically in education. Okay, I think we talked about AI and sort of the how things are very likely going to change in the future. I think it'd be amazing in a world where things become so efficient that it becomes very easy for anyone and everyone to be able to tell their story. So whether you're a student trying to tell your story, a faculty member, researcher, marketer, regardless of what your role is or what you're contributing in the education space, um, the ability to tell your story becomes super, super easy. Whether that's with a few clicks, a few prompts, whatever the future holds. But that's where I see the future of education is really around like storytelling, and being able to do it really effectively and really easily, regardless of what your role is. So we talk about this at Canva very regularly. It's like we want to empower everybody across campuses to be able to visually communicate. I think that visual communication really lends itself well into this kind of storytelling mantra. So that would be where I would go with it is that world of storytelling becoming simple and easy for anyone in the world.
Yeah, that is a beautiful vision for the future. Nick, thank you so much for being generous with your time and wisdom. We are so lucky to have you here with us today. To everyone in the audience, thank you for tuning in. We are super excited to see what you build and look forward to seeing your feedback requests in the feedback channel. And until next time, happy building and see you in Discord. Bye, y'all. Thank you.
It's Kathy.